thought my voice projected, but of course it's the global audience that have missed my dulcet tones. So I'll say it again. Good evening. My name is Councillor Steve Harvey. I'm Vice Chair of this committee, but the Chairman for tonight's meeting. This meeting is being streamed live to a global audience on the Cheltenham Borough Council YouTube channel. If you make any representations to the meeting, you will be deemed to have consented to be filmed and for the possible use of those images and sound recordings for broadcasting and or training purposes. I've got a couple of notes here before we move into the main part of the meeting. The first one is in relation to former Councillor John Payne, who was the chair of this committee. For personal reasons, John has had to stand down from Cheltenham Borough Council, and we respect those reasons. But John has a big pair of shoes to try and fill, so I'm not going to try and fill them. I'm just going to pay tribute to him in his time as the chair of this committee and as a member of this committee. And not just that, he was a very, very strong voice for Prestbury and an excellent colleague to all of us, and very much an independent. So we shall miss John. Also, I'd like to thank the chap on my right, our Executive Director for Place and Communities. I think it's about the fourth time now I've heard somebody say thank you to Darren because he's going. But I think it's fitting that in his last couple of weeks, that the committee that he's done most to support over a number of years recognises his departure to pastures new. And I think I can speak on behalf of all the committee, Darren, by saying thank you so much for all the advice you've given to us all as a group, to John as the chair, me as vice chair, and wish you the best of luck at Warwick. Our loss is definitely their gain. There is another gentleman in the chamber tonight who's moving on, and I've known young Redmond there for a while, since I was a councillor in the 90s. In fact, I've got down here my Ratcatcher, because I know that's your Twitter handle, if anybody wants to follow him on Twitter, of course. But somebody else that's been a stalwart officer for this borough over 4 decades. And whilst we understand your reasons for deciding that it's time to hang up your rat catching, your work on the climate agenda in the last couple of years has been outstanding, Mike, and it's going to be missed. I don't know how we're going to replace you. I'm sure, well, you're not going to help, are you? Because you're going as well. But you will be missed, and I'd like to put on record my own personal appreciation, because I remember you from the days in the 1990s on planning. So best of luck for whatever it is you choose to do in the future. Something about here about fire alarm. I won't bother with that, but if there is a fire alarm, then follow me out that way. Right, agenda item 1. I've received apologies from councillors Joy and Britta. I'm not aware of any others. I think we're all here. Okay. Does any member have any declarations of interest that isn't already in the members' declarations of interest? Oh, okay. Moving on to agenda item 3, which is minutes of the last meeting. I actually, if you permit me to correct one about myself, minutes said that I was a member of the Cheltenham Arts Council, and it's why, under declarations of interest to last meeting, I avowed my trusteeship and board membership of the Cheltenham Trust, not the Cheltenham Arts Council. I'm not a member of the Cheltenham Arts Council. So with that, I'm happy. Does any other member who was present at the last meeting have any changes to make? No? Are you happy for me to sign those minutes as a true reflection of what was, as it turned out to be, John's last meeting? Can I have a show of hands, please? Okay, you weren't there? No, it's all right. Yeah, no, you weren't there. Okay, thank you. I've already signed it, so thank you. We have no public and member questions. I'd like to comment about that, actually, because of some recent casework that I had about transparency in the Borough Council. Each committee of this council is broadcast live via our YouTube channel, and each committee invites members of the public and fellow councillors to submit questions which will be answered. So I think that's a shame we don't get asked enough public member questions. at the committee stages. It seems to be the sexy ones like the council and the cabinet. But having said that now, with John watching, I'm sure in the next meeting we'll get a public question from him. But anyway. Right. Agenda item 5. Just trying to see which is the cabinet member that is here. We've got 3 cabinet members here, actually. So I didn't know whether... oh, Councillor Atherson, is it you down to give a quick briefing for us, or is it a combination of yourself and Councillor Dobie and Councillor... I missed that one, I'm sure it was funny, Alicia. Oh, sorry, Councillor. Does any member of ONS have any burning questions they want to ask the cabinet members that are currently here, and indeed the leader of the council who's just come in? Good timing, Councillor.
I'm late because my ferry was late. Sorry.
You're what? Your ferry? What a great excuse. Councillor Baker's away at the moment. He ferried to where he went to because he didn't want to have a carbon footprint. So, leader of the council is now here. So I don't know whether did any of the members of ONS want to. It's rare we get 4 cabinet members here. I know they've got different bits tonight. Any burning questions for the cabinet members that are here? No. Okay, brilliant. We'll move on. Matters referred to this committee. Not aware of any, but did any of the members have anything that they want to raise now, or did you have something you wanted to add to the work plan later? Councillor Fifield.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if this is appropriate, but I was wondering if there was any update on what the situation was for the chairmanship of this committee, and if there were plans in place for that process.
Thank you, Councillor Fifield. It's actually a little note here about October council meeting, but if I could defer, that's fine. If I could defer to Darren for a quick update on that.
Yeah, as Councillor Harvey said, it'll be October council that'll get addressed. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Right. Galloping along. So, agenda item 7. The Ubico annual report. I wonder if we could come to Councillor Chain's questions at the end, but can I welcome the Ubico team for coming to join us tonight. Rob Heath, who is the Ubico Director of Operations. Good evening, Rob. Marvin Langston, the Ubico Head of Operations. Good evening and welcome. Karen Watson, the Environmental Partnership Manager, and well known to the borough because she works for the borough and she's I've known her a long time as well. So, and Councillor Ian Dobie, our cabinet member for waste, recycling, street services, and green open spaces. You're very welcome. And I think Karen, you wanted to do a brief introduction and then hand over to the Ubico people. Okay, over to you then.
Good evening, members. Thank you very much, Chair. This is the report, that's an annual report which Ubico is required to present to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee each year, and it is actually mainly looking at last year's financial year, so the performance mainly relates to that, though we have tried to give some trends for this current year given where we are. And John Payne, when he was chair, kindly suggested that we actually had this item on this agenda because of the climate change linkages. So I'm just going to very briefly summarise the covering report which I've sent out, which really just picks out some highlights from the Ubico presentation. It's also attached that members would have seen. And then I'll hand over to Ubico for a very, very brief sort of opportunity to highlight anything in the presentation they wanted to raise your attention to. And then we're happy to deal with any questions if that's all right. So as I say, this is a report looking mainly at last year's financial performance and general performance in terms of quality, so service delivery, so it's all those sorts of things, mist bins and everything else on grounds, street cleansing. In the main, actually, it was a very good report, so it's very pleasing to see that, and I'll leave Ubico to talk some of the highlights about that. In particular, actually, it's a good news story around our climate change pathway and some of the activity that's taken place. So Ubico have been very helpful in leading the way with us, and we've got a very good partnership relationship with them. So we've got quite a number of vehicles that are at the moment, and I'm not sure whether members will remember there was a cabinet decision taken in December 21 where we decided that as many vehicles as possible we'd move from diesel, given its issues with the environment, to hydrogen-treated vegetable oil. And that's palm oil free, certified palm oil free. I will stress that, please. And we've therefore got quite a good result from that. It's 492 tonnes approximately of CO2e, greenhouse gases, that we've actually reduced since up to May 23 when we measured that. So that's a significant contribution, and that's down to the efforts of Cheltenham Borough Council funding the equipment and actually Ubico operating that and bringing it in. So that's actually something quite tangible. In terms of other improvements, where Ubico have, and like I say, I'll leave this for detail for Marvin to actually perhaps highlight in a little bit, is around there's an awful lot of technology which I've added onto our vehicles. As a result of that, we've actually managed to save nearly 9,000 litres of fuel. So obviously that's fuel we're not burning, whether that be HVO or, in fact, diesel. So obviously that's a good news story too. In terms of financial performance, last year, £80,000 underspent. So that's a good news story too. And there is set out in the report some of the reasons actually where we had inflation, pay rises from salaries, etc., etc. So there is some information sitting in there. In terms of actual quality of service performance, they've done very well. We've got a target of 99% accuracy rate. They've reached 99.92%. And in terms of risks, one of the things that I think Ovian Scrutiny last time when we came actually said it would be helpful if we could have a bit more exposure to what the risks are that the Ubico contract is facing. A few of those are set out in there, and in the main they're around inflation, fuel, salaries, etc. And it talks about health and safety, which is a very significant part of this industry, and the Ubico presentation does set out a bit more detail in that. Some of the risks around street cleansing, grounds maintenance haven't been expanded on in great detail here, but fundamentally there's a lack of skills within the industry at a price that we can afford. And that's something that Ubico are tackling with some in-house training, apprenticeships and things like that. That's really a summary, Chair. I don't want to go on and on and on, but I'm happy to hand over to Marvin if the committee would like, just for a few highlights to be raised, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely fine. Hand over to Marvin then. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Yeah, just to expand really on what Karen was saying with regards to the missed collection accuracy, 99.92%. To put that into perspective, we carried out 6,337,500 collections approximately. Even though it's not great, missing 4,929 in that 15-month period, it's one of the highest within Ubico's organisation for the number of missed collections. Again, sort of expanding on the eco side of things, we also introduced driver behaviour training, which basically teaches drivers how to drive more eco-friendly. What we found with that is it's a transferable skill that they can take in when they're driving their own vehicles. So not only are they being a bit more eco-friendly at work, hopefully they're transferring that into their own lives and saving themselves a little bit of money. Again, with what Karen said there, grounds maintenance is a difficult sector to start filling. We're starting to find that we have to be a bit more innovative about the ways that we get the skill levels of people that we require. So what we've started doing is putting people through apprenticeships and sort of upskilling people within our current organisation. And it's paying dividends really, because we're starting to invest within the team and they're sort of feeling the love a little bit. And something I wanted to touch upon is we've been doing a lot of work with reducing sickness absence, both long-term and short-term. We use an external, so if somebody has to take time off, they have to use an external provider, they have to ring. We also have mental health nurses on site, so if anybody's suffering with anything like that, they've got somebody within the organisation that they can speak to be signposted to the professionals. And we've seen a significant drop in the number of people that are taking time off work. And that's hopefully a bit of a whistle-stop tour of the report. But I'm open to questions if anybody's got any.
Okay, thank you, Marvin. I'd like to just pick up on the mental health support that the team get. I think that's excellent. It's something which is becoming, sadly, more and more needed in our society. I'm delighted as somebody that is a current somebody who's currently dealing with depression and anxiety, delighted that the support that I got from the Borough Council is also being given to the Ubico team as well. So I'm really pleased about that. Councillor Took.
I just wanted to congratulate you. I read the report and I was incredibly impressed. I mean, you're performing across your customer service KPIs, your environmental KPIs, your absence KPIs. The fact that you've managed to underspend when fuel prices have been rocketing is amazing, and I have no questions. I just want to congratulate you and take my hat off to you. Thank you.
Any other member have any questions for them? Councillor Beale.
Hello. Sorry, just rooting through the report and just trying to think about something I can find, which I can ask you a question on. It's a really good report, by the way. There's some marginal changes. Two things that struck me. One was, you may have some comments on this. One was that the overall tonnage has gone down, just marginally, every month. I wonder if you have any thoughts on why that is. Secondly, it looks like complaints have gone up a little bit and compliments have gone down a little bit. So I just wonder if there's a story we're missing in terms of the collections that is not reflected in some of the complaints.
Thank you. It's interesting when you have a cost of living crisis because people can't tend to afford to buy quite as much. And what we are seeing, and this is certainly reflected across the county, in fact across the country, is all the residual waste refuse tonnages are going down. And that in part could be where the government's got extended producer responsibility coming in. A lot of manufacturers are looking at less packaging. Obviously people throw that sort of thing away because a lot of it's not recyclable at the moment. In combination with perhaps the cost of living crisis, and we'd like to think actually some of our publicity that encourages people to reduce the amount of waste they're throwing away is helping as well. I suspect the biggest factor might be the cost of living crisis. And in looking at the complaints and compliments, interestingly, we've had a little bit of a change with some technology and our drive to try and make sure we're capturing complaints. So it could well be that we're actually capturing and recording and formally logging those complaints better than we were before. We're not seeing any big trends other than that I think that we could anecdotally tell. So I think it's possibly that.
Yeah, Councillor Beale, over to you.
This was on the, now what was it? It was, yes. It was the, more of a statement really than a question, I apologise. Just wanted to say what's very encouraging is the amount of recycling boxes that have been requested. Huge amounts of requests for those, which is very encouraging that behaviours are clearly changing in Cheltenham. So yeah, really good to see that.
Councillor Williams.
Hi, I just noticed recently as well, and which is a bit of a reflection on what we were just saying, is the amount of very, very overloaded bins. Do we actually go back to these people and do we anyone ever talk to them about what they're actually bunging in these things? I mean, our collections have only just been done and there's already a bin sort of piled high by one of my neighbours and think, why? What on earth are you putting in there?
Thank you. We have a closed bin lid and no sideways policy in Cheltenham. I think we need to actively enforce that in a much more robust way than we have been. We certainly are looking to do that across many parts of Cheltenham. We have had a gentle introduction to that policy since it was agreed when we had the strategy approved by Cabinet, and we're at the point now that everybody's had an opportunity to understand what's required, and so we will be actively taking that forward. But I take on board your point. There are some people where they have struggled with collection, so sometimes they're allowed to put extra waste on the next collection, and that saves fuel and money in terms of going back for a collection in between. But you're right, we do need to tackle that a bit more forcibly, I think, involving ward councils when we're doing that, and we're looking at how we approach that over the next 12 months, to be honest.
So just come back quickly, that some of these people seem to have more than one bin. I mean, how does that happen as well?
That will be in conjunction with this initiative I've just described. Bins do have a habit of walking from one property to another all by themselves, and it's quite inexplicable. And once somebody's got an extra bin, they really don't want to let it go. So that's part of our, it's going to end up having to be sort of an area-by-area approach, I think, and actually knocking on doors and actually helping people understand they only need to have one bin. But in part, that's educational, helping people to do more recycling. And one of the pieces of work we need to do is actually have a look, is there a correlation between those people that have got huge amounts of residual waste and overflowing bins and perhaps not recycling, and were we to actually reverse that, then we might actually have less in their bins.
Just on that top, oh, sorry, Councillor Fifield. Oh, no, sorry, beg pardon, Councillor Nelson, before Councillor Fifield.
Thank you, Chair. Like the others have said, I think fantastic report and all very clearly presented. Thank you. Just a couple of minor clarifications, if I may, please. The slide 12 on page 28, which talks about number of new garden waste subscriptions, is that a net figure or gross of new? Because obviously there are occasionally, obviously people, some cancel their garden waste bins. So is that just new ones, or is it net of cancellations? And the second question is, and I would like to thank personally Karen for all her patience with my individual regular requests for grounds maintenance and clearing of pathways. Just a clarification on terminology. When I keep saying, please can these verges be cleared, please can these pathways be cleared, are those classified within the grounds maintenance requests, please? Thank you very much.
Thank you. So taking the point around your particular issues, more than happy to help any ward member that's got any difficulties with any of those things and trying to resolve things. So more than happy to do that, Emma, not a problem at all. In terms of the new garden waste subscriptions, yeah, that should be a net figure. What we're really looking at is seeing how much we're growing the service, so how many more people are coming on. And clearly, obviously, we've had to take off those people that have cancelled. And there was one more point, which I'm not entirely sure I can quite remember.
When I ask you for the verge clearing and the pathway clearing, do you classify that as grounds maintenance requests?
They are grounds maintenance requests, yes.
Well, if I could just ask a quick question on something which Councillor Williams raised, which was the enforcement of the closed bin policy. I think we had a question to full council in June or July of this year, where a member of the public was being, they were really wanting clarity on things like that. So I wonder if there's a team who could just sort of summarise what you actually would do to try and educate somebody that is in need of education.
So as I say, we've got a closed bin lid and no side waste policy. And effectively what happens when the Ubico crews get to somebody's property, if they're either not sorting their recycling or they've actually got too much refuse, there's a sticker that gets put on, and it's basically a three-pronged attack. So there's a sticker, then they actually get a letter through their door, and then there's another sticker. So there's plenty of opportunities, and during the course of all that, they're given an opportunity to actually contact the council on 262626, and then we can give them telephone advice, and sometimes that's from my team, occasionally it's from a Ubico supervisor, depending on what the circumstances are around that. Sometimes we also get the neighbourhood team to get involved with that and offer that educational support. Sometimes it involves us going actually and speaking to them at their door and physically having a look at what they've got in their bin and helping them with some advice. So that's generally what we do. Clearly, when you've got odd numbers of people, that's very easy to manage, but where you've got certain areas where one of the members mentioned about numbers of extra bins and those sorts of things, we need to be having a look and helping that part of the community because they may have some different issues that we need to be addressing. So that might be a slightly different approach, but they would still have all the stickering approaches, so they have opportunities to understand what's going on and seek support directly from the council.
So it sounds like that's done with a lot of love and is not very draconian. So I'm pleased to hear that. Councillor Fifield.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for coming in. We appreciate it, and the report is great. I have a really interesting point you made in your briefing is that expertise or sort of people employed, their salaries are increasing, but there's a lot of competition for grounds maintenance staff, and I thought it would be. I would love to know a bit more about that, sort of what the causes of that, and over what timescale that is an issue, and is that something that you see being an issue in the medium or long-term future? And do you think you see it as a particular risk to your service delivery, if that makes sense?
Hi, thank you. Yes, so we believe over a period of time, things such as apprenticeships stopped or dried up. So there wasn't any apprenticeship. So the older people that are coming to the end of their careers, we're struggling to replace those with the skills. We've certainly at Cheltenham, we've now brought back in apprenticeships, and we're doing on-site training as well to get back that skill level. It's something that Marvin and Karen deal with, and I've got involved recently, and it's quite in depth. Even to mark out a football pitch is, you know, you think you could just go down there and do that, but you need training. So we are working hard with apprenticeships, and we're also working hard with some organisations to try and get younger people involved. So I personally work together with the Gloucestershire care leavers that want to get into work. So we go along and talk to them and say, would you be interested in this sort of apprenticeship, or and try and increase that. And one of Yubico's business objectives is to increase the apprenticeship. So when I first arrived at Yubico, we had an apprentice for vehicle technician in the workshops. We've now expanded the apprenticeships a lot across the grounds maintenance, but also across all other areas within Yubico. So I think when I started, we had 2 vehicle technicians, and I think we've got something like 8 apprentices now across the whole business.
Just on, so taking that, I assume the apprenticeship scheme that you're doing, which I think is fantastic, I think apprenticeship's fantastic, is the main way that you're tackling that issue. Yeah, basically, yeah. Perfect, thanks.
Great, good to hear apprenticeships being mentioned. Any other member have any other questions for the Yubico team? Now, Councillor Chalin has submitted questions prior to the meeting, and they've been published, I believe, and they're available on the web. Did any member, have all members seen the questions that Councillor Chalin submitted and the answers? One I'd like to pick up on, if that's okay, Councillor Chalin, is question 3, which was to do with the reduced hours at Swindon Road. And I was pleased to see that the response from Yubico was that fly tipping had actually decreased in the Cheltenham area and across the other 7 or 8 authorities you've got contracts with. I wonder if you could just expand on that, if you might, please.
Yeah, it's a trend that we're seeing, that they're slowly decreasing. So the numbers we report, the numbers I've reported on that question, is that the actual number of fly tip incidents rather than the total tonnage. Again, going back to something Karen mentioned earlier, perhaps the cost of living crisis, people aren't doing DIY, they're not redecorating or, you know, doing up their house or putting an extension on. So there's no theory behind it. Personally, myself, I think you're either a fly tipper or you're not. So the only thing I can put it on is the cost of living and people not doing so much at home.
Okay, thank you. Karen.
Thank you, Chair. Just to interject, clearly what we're dealing with here are the Yubico figures, and I'm trying to get some information out of the neighbourhood team to actually correlate just to see across Cheltenham Borough whether those trends still are there. We're not seeing huge increases, but I think we need to just double check. I'm more than happy just to send a note round to all members just clarifying that point.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. Does any other member have any final questions for the Yubico team? No? Ian, did you want to sort of have a few words, or you're just happy to leave it to the team tonight?
I would like to add my congratulations and thanks to you and through you to your teams for the excellent work that you've done over the past year or so. Yubico continues to be an excellent organisation and one that's committed to training and retraining its staff. And I know that the issue of keeping the ground staff is a real one. I was out at King George V playing field just last week, and the chap, it was Simon, who was laying out the football pitch. I knew him at school, so he is really quite old. He's 66 now, and he remembered me too. So that issue of not only ensuring we recruit, but also, frankly, there's an issue of retention as well. I think that will be agreed, that the salaries that we or Yubico can offer mean that people have to really love the job, they have to be committed to the job, and luckily we've got some people in our Yubico teams who really believe in it, and they can see that Yubico and the council is investing in them. We can't necessarily compete, but the bottom line costs and the salaries are what they are. But nevertheless, we I believe, are a very committed and caring employer that believes in developing staff. And Cheltenham is a great place to work, and the rest of Gloucestershire, I should say, and West Oxfordshire is also a great place to work for Yubico, because it is a very high-quality organisation. And year after year, they bring their reports along to this meeting, and the comments that we've had tonight, the very positive comments, and I've been on this committee, so I know this, are consistently positive. So it's not a once flash in the pan thing, it's a consistent picture that ONS is seeing now, if I may say that, Chair. And I'm very proud of the work that you do, so thank you. And I include you in that, Karen.
Thank you, Councillor Dobie.
Councillor Dobie, thank you. And I'd like to echo the comments from other councillors like Councillor Took and Councillor Beale. I was looking for the but in the report. As a former chair of audit, compliance and governance, I did go through it looking for the but, and I couldn't find one. So I think that's really, colleagues have already commented on it, so thank you to all of the team. It's a difficult job. I'm sure some of the teams have got some horror stories to tell us about how customers can be, really unnecessary. So I am very pleased that there is mental health support. Some of the updates to the vehicles are really encouraging, and and saving £80,000 when fuel has gone through the roof, that's to be applauded, I think. And also going to more eco-friendly fuels and vehicles. It's very keeping with what we as a council are hoping to achieve. So from the chair, I'd just like to say thank you very much. And if you want to escape, you can. Okay, cheers. Okay, I'd like to move on to agenda item 8 and welcome Emma Wall, who's the CBH Executive Director for Property and Communities. Good evening. And Vicky Day, who's the CBH Head of Technical and Investment. Again, welcome. Councillor Chalin, again, has asked questions and they've been answered and they're published on the web, so I won't necessarily cover them unless any member has not had a chance to see them and would like amplification. But I'll just thank Councillor Chalin for having done that, because they were great questions. But Emma, if you'd like to introduce the paper and then respond to any members' questions, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that Councillor Atherstone has agreed to introduce this item for us.
Thank you. Victoria, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really pleased to bring our report to you tonight. Thanks ever so much to Cheltenham Borough Homes colleagues who have spent a lot of time putting all the data together so we're able to report on this year's statistics, and especially to Emma Wall and Vicky Day for being here today as well. You will see through the report of our greenhouse gas emissions, over the past 3 years, we have seen a gradual decline across all three scopes, so scope 1, scope 2 and scope 3. And the percentage change on the original baseline in 2019 shows an overall of pretty much 15%, 14.66% across all three scopes. In particular, I'd like to draw your attention to scope 3. You will see that the majority of Cheltenham Borough Homes carbon emissions are from the huge number of stock that CBH manage on behalf of CBC, and that actually accounts for 94% of all of CBH's carbon emissions, CO2e, which is key to understanding why it's so important that we continue to be successful and that the funds continue to be available for the Government Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund. It's not only a key driver to support our net zero targets, but is also key to improving the lives of residents across the town. As we know, less energy efficient homes equals higher energy costs, whether that's cooling requirements in the summer like today, or heating the home in our cooler months, which we have lots of them. So the council, together with Cheltenham Borough Homes, has worked hard over the past 3 years to make sure not only did we apply for these, the SDSF, Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund, that's easier to say, rounds over the past 3 years, but we've also been successful. That has meant that in a programme that now takes us up to 2025, 250 homes in Cheltenham would have been increased from below C to up to EPC C, which is the level that the central government is currently aspiring towards. However, that doesn't make net zero homes. Obviously, you need to be into the A's plus. Even though the target is EPC level C, through other measures, Cheltenham Borough Homes do have ambitions for net zero when it comes to supply of new homes and also retrofitting. It is essential through the decarbonisation funds that we do apply a fabric first approach, which involves improvement measures such as wall cavity insulation, loft insulation, improved ventilation, before you go on to add technological advantages such as solar panels or air source or ground source heat pumps. Otherwise, the savings will not be realised. So energy fabric first approach is really essential. There are still 700 homes as part of CBH's managed portfolio, and if we continue to receive the funds up to 2030, then we can almost make the target of bringing those homes up to EPC C, but that is 100% based on getting the right level of funding and support from government. Another challenge for CBH is their building services fleet, with all the transport for the building maintenance of homes, etc., and services. And that is being approached in conjunction with the leases of the various vehicle plans. So to come out of a lease early requires sort of penalties. So that is being addressed in line and might not necessarily go to electric, but the best efficient transport use will be taken forward rather than the current mode. Waste, water and purchasing has not currently been accounted for in the last 3 years, but however is going to be a focus over the next 12 months to incorporate those figures into the calculations. CBH do not own any of their own properties, so it will have to be done working in partnership with those who own the property. Employee commuting is, you'll notice, it stayed the same over the last 3 years. This is currently a nominal figure, and we have aspirations to conduct future surveys which will hope to improve on that nominal figure. Overall, behavioural change is also a key driver for Cheltenham Borough Homes, and they have done great work with regards to various neighbourhood works programmes, community engagement activities, one-on-one support for customers in terms of energy advice, energy-related cost of living support, advice to those that already have solar panels installed to understand how to maximise the benefit of the electricity generated, fact sheets, with regards to information around the works of the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund. As you can imagine, this does cause some difficulties with those that are living in the homes in terms of their everyday lifestyles. It might not always be convenient, so we have to make sure that we're working around that and trying to support them as best we can. And looking at the the overall, this level of activity and focusing in carbon reduction activities is a huge focus for CBH over the next 24 months. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, or my colleagues will be happy to answer them. And I think Cabinet Member for Emergency Councillor Alicia Lewis would also like to say a few words on the report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lewis.
There we go. Always an issue at committee, and we've always like to start really early. So, I mean, what can I say that has not already been said? I think the issue of net zero social housing is so important in Cheltenham because ultimately we are building our social housing stock to provide safe, reliable, affordable homes for families and members of our community in need, not just for today, but for the future. And if our homes cannot be delivered up to that standard, they simply will not be sustainable. They won't be sustainable for the planet, they won't be sustainable to live in terms of fuel bills, and they won't be something we can carry forward to our children and our children's children, who we do also want these fantastic houses to be able to meet the needs of. And I think our initial projects that are ongoing at the moment, delivering new net zero social homes, are really exciting and really important. And I'm really sincerely look forward to seeing some more of those. So it's an excellent report. Thank you to CBH for bringing it forward.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lewis. Really pleased to see this report come to this committee because I believe Overview and Scrutiny picked up on this following a member's question earlier in the year, where the target of carbon zero by 2030 was, I think, led by Councillor Lewis very ably at the time. And the question was asked by a member who's not present here tonight about what about CBH? So going through this report, there is working with, collaboration with, engagement with throughout the report. And I think that's testament to the work that probably was ongoing at the time the initial report from Councillor Lewis was given to Council. But I'm pleased to see that there is this joined up approach. And I just wondered if Emma and Vicky, you'd like to sort of comment further on that, because if there's anything else that we as a council can, and the cabinet members are here, can help. Even if it's just education. I mean, this is helping because this is being broadcast to a global audience of about 3. But it's something that is really important. And if you've got anything else you want to add to it, that'd be great.
Thank you. Just to say, in relation to the work that we're doing with Cheltenham Borough Council and with Yubico, actually, we are meeting with them regularly, and we do share ideas around initiatives being adopted and plans that are being put forward. The Yubico, for example, working with Yubico, we've managed to achieve our aim of decarbonisation of our fleet by the supply of vehicles that aren't diesel powered. They're plant-based powered, and that is working really closely in conjunction with Yubico, and we couldn't have done that without their support. And this is really key because it's not just us on our own, or any one of us on our own. We're all working together to maximise the opportunity that we have and to bring these initiatives forward. Equally, the work we're doing with CBC and the climate team, I'm disappointed, Mike's leaving, and a few others are leaving, because we've really sort of forged a really good relationship over the last 12 to 24 months. And even working on the carbon footprint template together has been really beneficial. And the knowledge that they have around waste and the procurement and the water, which we're going to be combining into the report in the next 12 months, has been really invaluable to us. So, yeah, we've really appreciated that.
It's really good to hear. I mean, none of us can achieve our end aims alone, and to have the various groups working very much on a day-to-day basis for the benefit of everybody in Cheltenham is absolutely fantastic. So I'd like to thank you for that. Does any member have any questions for the team that they'd like to ask? Councillor Took.
Many thanks for the report and many thanks for Councillor Atherston's presentation, which brought clarity on some key areas. And many thanks for Councillor Chellin's questions as well, which brought clarity from on key areas. I have to say my view of the report is a bit more nuanced. My concern about it is it makes apples and pears comparisons on year figures. And a lot of the changes that seem to be linked to emissions there seem to be due to changes in methodology or changes in the network, the greening, what was the term that you used? The greening of the grid, rather than evidenced changes from CBH. So I don't know how to interpret those figures because I can't make that linear connection between CBH did this and therefore the emission went down in this way. Now, that's a problem when the data changes, but I wonder if it was wise to make those year-on-year comparisons. What I did hear loud and clear from Councillor Atherston was that, so first of all, I accept you've got a tough job, a really tough job. And what I did hear loud and clear from Councillor Atherston is that in order to reach those targets, we will need the support of government to get there. So we have a net zero target for 2030. For me, it would be great to have more evidence of what you're doing, but also more evidence of what you're not doing and what those blocks are. And if they are government funding or something else, you know, then we tackle it. But there wasn't enough of that in the report for me. I hope that's constructive.
Yeah.
Thank you for your comments. I really appreciate them. And around the collection of data for scopes 1, 2 and 3, indeed, what we found since we started measuring carbon emission reduction is that there has been a period of refinement of data. And to be fair, and as acknowledged and recognised in the report, we are still going through that period now, and we think we've reached the period where we're now sort of moving towards reduction rather than refinement in data. Our focus, you know, we've always been mindful of the requirement to reduce emissions across all 3 scopes, that being around the existing housing stock, business operations, and with over 94% of the emissions being in the existing housing stock, that existing housing stock has been a strong focus for us, purely because of the opportunities that there is in that emission reduction. When we consider what level of emission reduction we are able to achieve, it is entirely dependent on government funding. So, as set out in the report and as set out in the HRA business plan 2023 to 2028, we need to deliver carbon reduction measures at a viable pace and scale for the housing revenue account. And at present, that looks like delivering the minimum government standard for social housing of EPC level C by 2030. Now, that still relies on investment around 14 to 16 million by 2030 to do that. And that still relies on external government funding. What we recognise is, as CBH officers and CBC officers and members, is that is not carbon net zero. However, we will continue to maximise the level of funding available from central government via the SHDF funding to achieve as far as we can into that direction of travel towards net zero.
Brilliant, thank you. And thank you, Councillor Took, for that analysis and question, because in terms of data crunching analysis, this is a national global leader over here, so thank you for your incisive input on that. Does any other member have any questions for the CBH team before I wrap up? No? No, I think that says it all, really. So I'd just like to thank you. Thank you, Councillor Atherson, for your introduction, and Vicky and Emma for coming and answering the questions so well, being prepared. Not always the case, so we're always grateful. So thank you for that. There's no decision needed from the committee, but if there's any recommendations, we can either make them now or put it into the work plan later. But I think so far we've had a nice joined up meeting, and if there's no further questions, you can escape, so thank you very much for coming this evening. And then we'll move on to agenda item 9, which is the climate emergency overview. Right, so agenda item 9. Anybody would think that we've pre-planned all of this? I think Councillor Payne deserves some credit for having the three areas talking pretty much about similar topics tonight. These things don't just happen. Thank you to Darren as well. So I think, Mike, this is something which I believe you're going to lead on. Is that the case? Or Alicia, did you want to say something first? Okay. I'm just going by my script. I'm a slave to the script. So Councillor Lewis, if you'd like to introduce the item, please.
Thank you, Chair. So, to paraphrase a rather iconic climate change essay, climate change presents us with a rather jarring question. If we can't save everything, what are you personally going to try and save? What can you save or what can you build that will help make whatever is coming next better than it is today? What promises can we make to future generations about how the world will be the same and better than it is now? And that's very much the lens that this report and the work of Cheltenham Borough Council on climate change looks at this issue. Every little bit closer to net zero that we can get is a worthwhile trade for a slightly better future than the alternative. It does lead us to this very clear focus on understanding what it is about Cheltenham that we love, what it is that makes it such a great place to live, and understanding how we can make those things endure regardless of the climate crisis that we face, and in many ways in spite of it. So we have a whole range of projects ongoing at the moment, including things like the Leisure Centre project, which is based on the premise that, sure, we actually cannot afford to keep paying the increasing bills that come from its operation. But more importantly, it's absolutely worth saving. It is a vital lifeline. It's a space where children growing up across Cheltenham will learn to swim, to make new friends. There's coffee and soft play. It's a really important part of our community and really important for health and well-being. So we have to work something out. Another key focus for me is the fact that we have to find ways to reinforce the social infrastructure of Cheltenham. While we are living through a climate crisis, we've got a few other crises going on at the same time. And these spaces, our scout huts, our food banks, our churches, our religious spaces, provide so much comfort and so much support to our community. So it's undisputedly essential that our climate change strategy understands how these spaces are put at risk by climate change, by increased fuel costs, and understands how we at Cheltenham Borough Council can make a difference. The Green Deal has slowly but surely kicked off, and I'm incredibly proud of the initial projects, particularly the low-cost finance that we're offering to Cheltenham Town Football Club, who will be a very impressive member of their league once they put their fabulous new solar panels up. Cheltenham Town Football Club is so beloved across our town, and I think our community and our culture spaces are so important. It's easy to think of climate change in sort of the perspective of homes or in terms of bins. We've had so many different reports today, but I think retaining and protecting the things that are the real heart of our town is so, so important. Partnership working is also absolutely vital to delivering any of these aspirations. Cheltenham Borough Council can't do it alone. None of the organisations that have come in today can do it alone, and neither can the community organisations across Cheltenham that we work with. But if we all work together, I think we can really sincerely get to a point where we are delivering on our incredibly ambitious goals. I don't come to this committee believing that we found all the answers. I'm going to be honest about that. But I do think that a significant focus of our committee, our team this year, has been creating a culture and an environment at Cheltenham which prepares us as best we can for working things out as we go, because I think the climate crisis and these ever-changing winds in which we are subjected to at this council, be it financial, be it the government, though I do hope that one changes soon, we have to be willing to work and able to work with the best opportunities on the table, and I'm incredibly proud of the progress we've made. everything from the very visible large projects to the behaviour change projects that we've been involved in. I think this report is a real credit to the work of my officers and our team, who I think have done so much for this town. Particularly, I'd like to put on record my thanks to Mike, who of course is retiring, and it would be a terrible shame to lose him. I know he's been on this council longer than I've been alive. So thank you, committee colleagues, and if you have any questions, I would be delighted to take them.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lewis. And before I move on, my mother is turning in her grave at not saying hello to Maisie McCann, who's new to the climate team. I didn't recognise the name when I saw it on the agenda, but welcome to the team. It's an incredibly important part of the business, and your role in supporting the initiative is very much appreciated, I know, from Councillor Lewis and also from Mike. Mike, did you have anything you wanted to add to what Councillor Lewis has touched on?
I mean, I think it's been a very interesting debate this evening, and particularly hearing from CBH. I mean, the sort of challenges, I think, which CBH face in terms of implementing improvements to the housing stock, it's multiplied up many times if you look at what we're trying to deliver in relation to the borough as a whole. And net zero is a huge, huge challenge for the country, but also internationally as well. And I think, you know, there's a real concern, I think, that at the moment, maybe in priority terms, even on a national level, it's not being given maybe the prominence that it needs to be given. And we've seen, you know, some of the recent pronouncements by the government, which suggests some sort of slipping backwards against certain commitments. And I think that is a real worry, you know, and we can see some of the things that are going on this year globally, which I think really highlight the potential implications for us as a species across the globe. I think we're doing a huge amount locally. I think the climate team, you know, I'm very proud of the climate team. I'm obviously going to be leaving the authority, but very pleased to see the pace at which we've delivered initiatives locally, and I think that has been extremely positive. But it would be easy to take our eye off the ball of that, and I think we've got to try and keep up the pressure, and we've got to keep up the pressure, I think, on funders and on the government to actually do some of the things they need to do. When we set out the borough ambition for net zero, we knew 2030 was a hugely challenging target. We knew that we might, you know, we probably would struggle to achieve it, but it was about trying to get it into the public consciousness. It's about trying to get a degree of momentum behind that. And even if we fall short, at least we have struggled to do our best to achieve that at a local level. I think, you know, Cheltenham can be proud of the progress we've made locally, but I think the watchword is there's more to be done, and I think there's probably more to be done in terms of our resourcing locally, but we've got very challenging budgetary situations to manage locally, and other priorities to try and juggle against the climate imperative. So yeah, so that's my sort of parting shot. I think Councillor Tuck is absolutely right. I don't think we're absolutely there yet. I think it would be good to have a trajectory and to be working against some very specific milestones for that trajectory. But in doing so, I think we've got to recognise the resourcing implications, and that we don't necessarily have all the resource we would like to have in order to make that sort of very tangible progress to meet that 2030 goal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I mean, it never ceases to amaze me what our officers actually achieve with the resources that they are given by members. But I mean, I'm delighted we've got a cabinet member whose portfolio is climate and the way forward. Team has built up over the last couple of years. We've got somebody at director level, Mike, you leading for the last year or so. And I saw you in the River Scheldt last week in some pictures helping out the green team, so thank you for that. Can't keep a good man down, not that you are down, of course, but does any member have any questions for the team before Jackie? Councillor Chalin, sorry, Jackie.
actually, it's a comment really, and it relates to what you've just said in terms of having quite a steep aspiration. Not meeting it then can be a stick with which to beat. But actually, I think it really helps to keep up the momentum on progress. And so I do think it's always good. And I think the fact that we have got so many initiatives is probably a result of that.
Yep, Councillor Took.
So once again, I wanted to say thank you for an excellent report and excellent work. I was particularly pleased by the fact that biodiversity is covered in there as well, something I care about, and you're doing really good work. I have noticed a tendency in Cheltenham, because we care about stuff, to sometimes take on responsibility for other bodies. So No Child Left Behind would be a classic example of something where we do excellent work, but are picking up, arguably for government and for the county council on that front. I saw flooding on there, and it immediately made me think about GCC. I'm very aware that the streets flood around me. There's often a lake on the Evesham Road because the gullies aren't cleaned and the pipes aren't cleaned and so on, and that's a GCC responsibility. Obviously very aware that sewage floods in to our rivers because of the failure of Severn Trent and the failure to regulate that. So the work that you're doing on flooding is great, but how are you working in partnership with GCC? Do you think they're doing enough work to create floodplains outside the town, for instance, and work with farmers, work with landowners to make sure the flooding happens there and not in Cheltenham? Do you think that, Severn Trent is working with you well enough and so on? Sorry.
So I think flooding is definitely one of those areas in which we have to significantly invest in partnership working, because floodwaters don't typically respect county or borough boundaries, regrettably, or it might be handy otherwise. So Cheltenham obviously has its small sort of flooding team that we have. They then go to regular meetings with GCC and also bring in all their flood buddies from different parts of Gloucestershire, which I think is really good. They really enjoy those meetings. Every discussion I've had with them have said it's a constructive environment for the officers, and I think that's a really important thing to note before I note everything else I'm about to note in this answer. So I'm frustrated, I will admit, by our sort of relationship with GCC on the matter, particularly of climate change more broadly. I know we've had some small overlapping projects, but I think significant infrastructure funding and the design of significant infrastructure projects, be that new sort of transport infrastructure, it's so important that that stuff really reflects the needs and the environmental realities of Cheltenham. And quite frankly, we do need quite a significant amount of additional cash, which isn't really coming from government. So one can only hope it will come from GCC. So that, I think, is the real challenge, as with many things in the climate change realm. None of this stuff is cheap, but I do think the officers have a good relationship with their respective counterparts across Gloucestershire and with GCC broadly, so it's not for a lack of partnership working.
Okay.
Just coming to add.
Yeah, sure. Darren.
Just on the flooding bit, we've got an excellent sort of a small flooding team, but excellent officers in the team. It may be something that, as a committee, you may want to do more of a deep dive on as part of your agenda setting as well, because it's a subject in itself. So I probably would consider it as part of your work plan and invite the flooding team to come for a future agenda item on that specific subject.
Yep, I've seen them firsthand in Charlton Kings. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Chair. Just picking up on Darren's point, funnily enough, just today I was at a meeting here in the chamber, in the Muni, with GCC flood people, Cheltenham Borough Council flood people, and local councillors from Morden Hill, and we were looking at SUDs, so flood prevention in Morden Hill, putting in areas where the rainwater can drain away, and also new initiatives to put in rain drainage and green roofs and all that. And it was very, very encouraging, that's what I'm saying, but we are working collaboratively together with GCC to do that. I think it's an excellent report and very positive things coming through. I like the bit about the seeds, which was Councillor Dobie, the seeds going from Leckhampton over to Pittville Park. I think things like that, and it's what we think, maybe they're very quite small things, but when you add them all up, they make a difference, and I think that's really encouraging. A couple of questions. Obviously, losing Mike Redburn is a huge loss to us all, and I mean, it's going to be very difficult to replace him. But reality says, what is the succession planning? We know that climate change is vital. Have we got the right officers in place? Have we got the right skills in place? I noticed in paragraph on page 2, it said between January and July 2023, the council was lacking an officer with energy management responsibilities. Therefore, actions were not progressed as quickly as expected. So, what are our procedures for making sure we've got the right people in place, and have we got succession planning? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Nelson. Hopefully Mike is not a single point of failure, because what he is very good at is sharing his knowledge and background. But if I could pass over to Darren for to expand on this.
Yeah, just to give you the assurance, Councillor Nelson. So the recruitment at senior posts will be picked up by the Chief Executive, so that's currently under consideration. We've also had a recent LGA peer review, so they'll give insights in terms of expertise and things like that. And obviously with Mike leaving, and obviously Laura left recently, that gives the opportunity to revisit the skills we need and the capacity we need in the team. So I do give you the assurance it's underway, and I'm sure Gareth at a future group leaders meeting or member briefing could give a further update as that plan progresses. What I would say is the climate is it's an our core plan. It's one of our top priorities. We need to ensure that we've got the best resources, best skills and capability in the team. And we're lucky to have got Maisie in place as well. So I've got to mention Maisie, who's done exceptionally well, has come in. And I think with the pathway, the progress you'll see, the progress you've seen, and hopefully then with some new recruits coming in, I think that pace will continue. And the other thing I just wanted to mention, as this is my last meeting, if that's okay, Chair, is also, I just want to mention, just highlight the work of the Climate Impact Tool, because this is a national award-winning impact tool, and I think this is why this is important. It's used at the start of the decision-making process when you think about policy, decisions, initiatives. So actually, for us, embedding the use of the tool in the council and across our sort of delivery organisations, that's probably the most important things that we get right, because it actually gets thinking at the start across different departments and services, really. And I think the impact tool has probably been shared with numerous organisations across local government because of the way it was designed and it's been innovated, really. So I just wanted to highlight that, because I think that for me that was an exceptional area of work where that sort of strategic thinking was really, really carefully applied. And I said it won an award last year. I think it was last year or this year, I can't remember. Time flies. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. Your strategic thinking and oversight will definitely be missed.
We need to minute that.
Yeah, I'm sure it's already been taken down, chapter and verse. Did any other member, Councillor Nelson?
Sorry, Chair, and I might risk of asking a silly question, but can someone explain exactly what is the Zeller platform in lay terms, please?
Councillor Lewis.
So the Zeller platform is sort of an online app service that we are providing via our UK Shared Prosperity Fund, which allows businesses to plug in relevant information about how their business operates, how it's powered, what their energy usage is, that kind of thing. And what it will do is it will provide them with customised, personalised suggestions for how they can change their energy supply, change the way they're operating. I've spoken to businesses who are using the tool, so we've had about 130 or so, I think the report says so far, take up the tool, and they think it's brilliant. They are really grateful because it's one of the big things. So I was speaking to a lot of businesses early on in this portfolio who are saying, God, I'd love to change things, particularly in the face of the energy crisis, but we're not quite sure what we do, and all this advice feels quite generic. So I think the Zeller tool is fantastic for that, and businesses are really appreciating it. So if any business owners are watching this committee this evening, we do have plenty more free memberships to give away. So do drop us a line at Cheltenham Zero and we'll see what we can do.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. Does any other member have any questions? Well, I would just like to say thank you to everyone tonight, really, but around the climate bit. So thank you so much for your report. It doesn't stand still, does it? You seem to be going forward and going forward. And Mike's right. It's something that we're stretching out to do. But if we don't do it, we'll never get there. And there's a lot of well-meaning people in the town who expect things tomorrow or yesterday or last week. It's a path which started for us, I think, 2 years ago with the appointment of our cabinet member at climate level, or cabinet member level for climate. So I'm really pleased about that. Right, there's no decision required, but if there's any recommendations for the future that the committee would like to make, we can either talk about it now or raise it in the work plan. With that, I'd just like to thank you for coming, Maisie, and Mike, and all the best in your retirement. I'm sure we'll see you about. And thank you, Mike. Okay. Thank you, Emma and Vicky. Right, agenda item 10. We've had the reports from our 3 representatives on outside ONS bodies. I do recall one of the reps mentioning a couple of months ago about feedback to them, so I'll open it up to everybody in a minute to give any feedback that they wanted, but I will express my appreciation to councillors Clucas, McCloskey and Bamford for being our eyes on the ground and the 3 different areas that they are sitting in at county level and police and crime level committees. I would just like to add on a personal note that grateful to Councillor Bamford for his HOSC report. I was on HOSC as the borough rep for 2 years. One of the things that I've asked Councillor Bamford to look into is funding for our local pharmacies. And he's going to be speaking to my local pharmacy in Charlton Kings just to find out what is the root problem there. Because a lot of pharmacies are being, people are being encouraged, the way that the NHS is at the moment, to go to the local pharmacies to get help and get sort of a one-stop shop or a first aid situation. And yet pharmacy funding is being cut. So I think it'd be really useful, well, funding to pharmacies is being cut, really useful if Councillor Bamford were to look into that a little bit further, and he's already taken that on board. I hope the committee's happy with that, and he can raise it at HOSC. But if there's no other comments or questions for our feedback from the other outside body ONSs, I'll move on to agenda item 11, which I notice says ask the Vice Chair questions. Darren's gone, but I'm not quite sure who's actually drafted the ONS annual report. I suspect it's a combination of Councillor Payne and Darren. Either way, it's there for any comments now. There's no decision needed, but if you wanted to make any comments afterwards, please feel free. I think it's a nice swan song from Councillor Payne to go out on. But if anybody has any burning questions of me, having read it 2 hours ago, please fire away, or we can save it for another time. Any member any burning questions on the annual report? Okay. Right. Right. Updates from Scrutiny task groups, agenda item 12. There are currently no active Scrutiny task groups. Review of our work plan is agenda item 13. There's one amendment which follows on from the Gloucestershire Airport coming to us 2 or 3 months ago, where we said we look forward to seeing them in a year's time, but there was quite a bit of disquiet from some of the members about the presentation. Now, I will say it publicly because we're transparent. We presented questions prior to their attendance at the meeting, and those questions weren't answered. They've been answered subsequently, but they were submitted 2 weeks before they came to speak with us. So I think it was left that they would come back and speak to us again in a year's time. But post-meeting discussions with the chair, Councillor Payne, we thought it might be useful if we invite the airport back a little bit sooner than that and come with some answers this time. We appreciate the fact they've given the answers now, but is the committee happy to see the airport a little bit sooner than a year's time? And something that Bev's also trying to pull together is to get our colleagues at Gloucester City ONS to come and join us for a bit of that, probably in closed session or whatever, about the airport, because it's a jointly owned venture, but I'm not aware that this committee's actually sat with our opposite numbers, and we might have the similar concerns, similar questions. We've certainly got, you know, same aspirations, I think, make sure that it's a success. But I think that's something that Bev you're looking into for the future. Get our Gloucester colleagues involved.
Yes, just to understand if Gloucester City have invited the airport in the coming months, so I'm just going to check that with my colleagues in Democratic Services over there.
Brilliant, thanks, Bev. So, no decision required. Members, is there anything you think is missing off the work plan? We've covered all the good bases like the Golden Valley, the Minster. Is there anything else that you think that we could look at? Councillor Nelson.
Just taking on board what Darren said about the CBC and the flooding and what initiatives we're doing and County Council, yeah.
No, thank you. That's a timely reminder, so we can do that. Sorry, anything else? Councillor Took was reaching for his microphone. He was poised. No? No? Nothing on that? Okay. Councillor Took.
So just to say, it is over a year, I think, since I asked for the accessibility report, and it's still TBD.
Good question.
So it would be good to get that pinned down and actually happen.
Okay. Yeah. You can check into that, and I'll certainly send an email around.
Thank you.
You think it's over? I can't recall it actually, but yeah.
Yeah. So
we're looking.
It's
yeah.
just improving access for, you know.
Yep.
So
Nope.
be any kind of
we can check on that.
Thank you.
Right. We're going to move into exempt session in a minute. I'll just say that the next meeting. It's not the 30th of October, is it, Bev? The next meeting? It is. Oh, it is? Okay. Right. So, we are going to go into exempt session for the next two items because we've got minutes to approve. So, I am obliged to quote the following under the Local Government Act 1972, that the committee is recommended to approve the following resolution, that in accordance with section 100A, open brackets 4, close brackets, Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the remaining agenda items, as it is likely that, in view of the nature of the business to be transacted or the nature of the proceedings, if members of the public are present, there will be disclosed to them exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 and 5, part 1, schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Namely, paragraph 3, information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information, and paragraph 5, information in respect of which a claim to legal professional privilege could be maintained in legal proceedings. So I have to put that to the vote. Is everyone happy for us to go into private session to discuss those matters? Can I have a show of hands, please? Thank you. That's